before we dive into tonight's spine-chilling tales, I need to warn you, these aren't your typical campfire ghost stories. These are 3 true camping experiences that were submitted by real people, and I guarantee they'll make you think twice before pitching a tent in the wilderness again. If you're ready to have your sleep ruined tonight, smash that like button, subscribe for more terrifying true stories, and let's get into it. But seriously, maybe save this one for daylight. Story 1. The Watcher in the Woods. Our first story comes from Sarah, a 28-year-old nature photographer from Oregon. Last summer, she decided to spend a solo weekend camping in the Cascade Mountains to capture some wildlife shots. She'd done this dozens of times before, but this trip was different. Sarah arrived at her usual spot, a secluded clearing about 2 miles off the main trail. Perfect for photography, terrible for getting help if you need it. She set up camp as the sun began to set, nothing unusual, but as darkness fell, she started hearing something that made her blood run cold. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps circling her campsite. At first, Sarah thought it might be a deer or elk, but these steps were too rhythmic, too human. She grabbed her flashlight and called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" The footsteps stopped immediately. Complete silence. For about an hour, everything seemed normal. Sarah was starting to relax when she heard it again. This time, the steps were closer, much closer. They seemed to be pacing around her tent in a perfect circle, just beyond the reach of her campfire's light. Sarah's hands were shaking as she unzipped her tent flap, just enough to peer out. What she saw made her heart stop. In the tree line, about 30 feet away, she could make out a tall, thin silhouette. It wasn't moving. It was just standing there, watching. "I called out again," Sarah told me, but this time my voice was barely a whisper. The figure didn't respond, didn't move. It just kept staring at my tent. For the next 3 hours, Sarah sat frozen in her tent, listening to those footsteps circle her campsite. Every time she looked out, the figure was there, perfectly still, like a sentinel in the darkness. When dawn finally broke, Sarah packed up faster than she'd ever packed in her life. As she was loading her backpack, she found something that still gives her nightmares. Around her entire campsite, pressed into the soft earth, was a perfect circle of footprints. Large, bare footprints that definitely weren't hers. But here's the part that really messed with Sarah's head. When she got home and developed her photos from that trip, there was one shot she didn't remember taking. It was a picture of her tent, taken from outside the campsite, in the darkness, while she was sleeping inside. Unsettling silence. Sarah never camps alone anymore. Story 2. The Mimicking Voice. Our second story comes from Jake and his college buddy Marcus, who went on what they thought would be a fun weekend camping trip in the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia. They'd been planning this trip for months, looking forward to disconnecting from technology and reconnecting with nature. They found the perfect spot, a small clearing next to a babbling creek surrounded by dense forest. Everything was going great until the second night when they heard Marcus's girlfriend calling for help. The problem, Marcus's girlfriend was 200 miles away at college. "Help, Marcus, please help me. I'm lost." The voice was coming from somewhere deep in the forest, and it sounded exactly like Jessica, Marcus's girlfriend of 2 years. Every inflection, every tone, it was her voice. Marcus jumped up immediately. "That's Jessica. How is she here? Something's wrong." But Jake grabbed his arm. "Dude, Jessica is at state. You talked to her on the phone 3 hours ago, remember?" But the voice kept calling, "Marcus, I'm scared. Please find me." It was moving through the forest, always just out of sight, always just far enough away to seem real, but impossible to locate. Marcus was losing it. "That's her voice, Jake. What if she drove up here and got lost? What if she's hurt?" The desperation in his voice was heartbreaking, but Jake knew something was very, very wrong. For over an hour, they listened to Jessica calling for help. Sometimes the voice seemed close, sometimes far away. Sometimes it would whisper Marcus's name so softly they could barely hear it. Other times, it would scream in what sounded like genuine terror. Jake made a decision that probably saved their lives. He pulled out his phone. They had just enough signal for one call. He dialed Jessica's number while the voice was still calling from the forest. Jessica answered on the second ring. She was in her dorm room, had been there all evening, studying for exams. She was 200 miles away, safe and sound. While they were talking to her on the phone, they could still hear her voice, calling Marcus's name from the darkness. When Jessica realized what was happening, Jake told me, she started crying. She begged us to leave immediately, and honestly, the way that thing perfectly mimicked her voice, we didn't need to be told twice. They packed up their camp in the middle of the night and hiked out by flashlight. As they reached their car, they heard one final call from the forest. "Don't leave me, Marcus. Please don't leave me." But this time the voice sounded different, angry, like whatever had been mimicking Jessica wasn't happy that its trick hadn't worked. Marcus and Jake never went camping together again. And Marcus, he proposed to Jessica 2 months later. When something tries to steal your girlfriend's voice in the middle of the night, you realize what really matters. Story 3. The Night Visitors. Our final story is perhaps the most disturbing, and it comes from a family camping trip that went horribly wrong. The Williams family, mom, dad, and their 2 kids, ages 8 and 12, decided to take their annual camping trip to a remote lake in northern Montana. They'd been to this spot before, a beautiful lakeside campground that required a 45-minute hike to reach. Remote, peaceful, and completely isolated from the outside world. Exactly what they wanted for a digital detox family weekend. The first night was perfect. They roasted marshmallows, told stories, and fell asleep to the gentle sounds of the lake lapping against the shore. But around 2 a.m., something woke up Mr. Williams. His tent was shaking. Not from wind. There was no wind that night. Someone or something was pressing against the fabric walls of their tent, running their hands along the surface from top to bottom. Mr. Williams held his breath and listened. The touching was methodical, like someone was examining every inch of their tent. He could see the impression of fingers pressing through the fabric, moving slowly around the entire perimeter. He gently nudged his wife awake and whispered for her to stay quiet. Together, they lay there in terror as multiple sets of hands began exploring their tent. Not one person, several people, all moving silently around their campsite. Then they heard their 8-year-old daughter's voice, but she was sleeping right next to them in the tent. "Mommy, can you come help me?" The voice was coming from outside the tent near the lake. It was their daughter's voice, but their daughter was right there, fast asleep. Mrs. Williams started to get up, but her husband grabbed her arm. He pointed to their daughter, still sleeping peacefully between them. But outside, the voice continued, "Mommy, I fell down. I need help." For the next hour, they listened to perfect imitations of both their children's voices calling from different locations around their campsite. Sometimes the voices seemed to be coming from the lake, sometimes from the forest, sometimes from right outside their tent. "Please help us. We're scared." "Mom, where are you?" "Dad, something's chasing us." All while both children slept soundly inside the tent. The hands never stopped exploring their tent. Mr. Williams counted at least 6 different sets of fingers pressing against the fabric, sometimes so hard he was afraid the tent would tear. When morning came, the Williams family found their campsite completely ransacked. Their food had been scattered around, their spare clothes were hanging from tree branches, and their camping chairs had been arranged in a perfect circle around where their tent had been pitched. But most disturbing of all, they found dozens of handprints pressed into the mud around their tent. Adult handprints, child handprints, and some that didn't look human at all. The family packed up and hiked out immediately. They never spoke about that night until recently, when their now teenage daughter asked why they'd never gone camping again. When they told her the story, she went pale. "I remember that night," she said. "I had the strangest dream that you guys were outside calling for me, but when I tried to find you, I couldn't get out of the tent. It was like something was holding the zipper shut." Her brother nodded. "I had the same dream. But in mine, there were other kids outside, playing games and laughing. They wanted me to come play with them." The Williams family still won't discuss what they think was in those woods that night. But they've never been camping since, and they've made their children promise never to go camping without telling them exactly where they'll be. So there you have it, 3 true camping stories that prove sometimes the most terrifying experiences happen when we're supposed to be closest to nature. These stories were submitted by real people who experienced real terror in the wilderness. What do you think was happening in these stories? Have you ever experienced anything similar while camping? Let me know in the comments below, but maybe wait until daylight to share your stories. If you enjoyed these spine-chilling tales, smash that like button, subscribe for more true horror stories, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a terrifying upload. And remember, the next time you're camping and you hear something moving around your tent at night, maybe it's better not to look outside. Sweet dreams, horror lovers. You're going to need them.